All right, so now we're going to look at reference angles, and this is a part of trig that's really important because it'll help us come up with values of trig functions given an angle or a reference angle. So first we're just going to look at today how do you find a reference angle, and how to use reference angles will become more apparent on future lessons. So let theta, so theta is what we call an angle. In trigonometry, we use the Greek letter theta. Let theta be an angle in standard position. So standard position means that its initial side is on the positive x-axis, and then we have a terminating side to the angle. The reference angle, we're going to call that RA, of an angle is the positive acute angle formed by the terminating ray of the angle and the closest x-axis. So one of the important things that you need to realize is that you're only going to be working with the x-axis. You're not going to be working with the y-axis. So let me just kind of draw some angles for you to get an understanding. In the first quadrant, if I have an angle that's in the first quadrant, so this is my theta. It says the reference angle is the acute angle formed by the terminating ray. So that would be, I'm going to do that one in green. Here's my terminating ray. And the closest x-axis. Well, the closest x-axis is the positive x-axis. So in the first quadrant, my reference angle and my angle are the exact same thing. Okay? So for example, let's say that my angle is equal to 30, my reference angle will be equal to 30. Let's look at an angle in the second quadrant. So let's say I have an angle in the second quadrant. This is my theta. That's my angle. The reference angle is going to be the terminating side and the closest x-axis. Only the x, we're not looking at the y, so the closest x-axis would be here. So this is my reference angle. This distance here is my reference angle. So if my theta was, let's say, 100 degrees, my reference angle is going to be 180 minus 100, or 80 degrees. Let's look at a quadrant 3 angle. Let's say my theta, here's my initial side, it opens into the third quadrant. So this is my theta. My reference angle is going to be the terminating side. I'll mark this in green. And the closest x-axis, that would be here. So this is my reference angle here. So let's say, for example, that my theta was equal to 200 degrees. That means my reference angle is going to be 180 plus, or actually, let me take that back. It's going to be 200 minus 180. So that's going to give me 20 degrees. And then lastly, if we're in the fourth quadrant. If I'm in the fourth quadrant, here's my initial side. I open all the way to the third quadrant. So my theta opens up like so. So my reference angle is going to be the terminating side of my angle and my closest x-axis, which would be here. So my reference angle is this distance here. So I think of the reference angle, it's always positive. That's something important to know. And it's a distance. We want to know how far is that distance. So if let's say my theta were equal to 330, my reference angle is going to be 360 minus 330, which will give me 30 degrees. So that's kind of how we go about finding our reference angles. We can find them in radians or in degrees. So if you look in the first quadrant, it's always whatever my theta is, that's my reference angle. That's for degrees and radians. In the second quadrant, in degrees, I'm going to do 180 minus theta. In the third quadrant, I'm going to do 180 plus theta. And actually, that's wrong. It's going to be, it's 180 minus theta, and then this is going to be theta minus 1, or actually, yeah, theta minus 180. And this is going to be theta minus pi. So this is my third degree, or this is degrees in the third quadrant, and this is degrees in the fourth quadrant. Here we have radians in the first or in the second quadrant. Here is radians in the third quadrant, and here is radians in the fourth quadrant. So this is important to kind of refer back to. I would refer back to this all the time when you're trying to find your reference angles. All right, so let's do a few of these. Let's say I have a 45-degree angle. So I want to find the reference angle. So here's my angle. I'm in the first quadrant. I don't know why that's not working. Let me fix this. So if I'm in the first quadrant, that means this distance is 45 degrees. My reference angle is always equal to my theta in the first quadrant. So that means my reference angle here is also equal to 45 degrees. Let's look at a second quadrant angle. If I look at 175, that's in quadrant 2. So this is my theta. This is 175 degrees. My reference angle is going to be this angle here. This is my reference angle. So in the second quadrant, my reference angle is always equal to 180 minus my theta. So 180 minus 175. So that will give me 5 degrees. So my reference angle is equal to 5 degrees. Now we have an angle in the third quadrant. So it's going to open here. So this is my theta. My theta is 230 degrees. If I'm trying to find my reference angle is going to be the terminating side and the closest x-axis. So this is my reference angle here. So when I'm in the third quadrant, my reference angle is always equal to my theta minus 180, or 230 minus 180. So that'll give me 50 degrees. And finally, we'll do a fourth quadrant. So let's say I'm in the fourth quadrant. I have a 300-degree angle. That means it's going to open here, 300 degrees. My reference angle is going to be the terminating side and the closest x-axis. So my reference angle is going to be this distance here. When I'm in the fourth quadrant, my reference angle is always 360 degrees minus theta. So it's going to be 360 degrees minus 300. So I will get a reference angle of 60 degrees. So here I have a reference angle of 50 degrees. Here I have a reference angle of 60 degrees.